There's no record of anyone by that name ever working for the government, the CIA recruiter said coldly. Sophia stared at the teaching certificate in her hands, her mother's name, her mother's photo. She died in Morocco, Sophia whispered. 2012. They called her Nightingale. The recruiter froze. His face went pale. He grabbed his phone with shaking hands. Don't move. Don't say that name again. Someone from Langley needs to hear this right now. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we dive into this story of buried truth and hidden sacrifice, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe families deserve to know the truth about their heroes, hit that subscribe button. These stories matter. Georgetown University's Walsh Building commanded respect with its Gothic Revival architecture. The CIA recruitment office occupied a discreet third-floor suite, its presence announced only by a small brass plaque reading Government Career Services. Sophia Brennan sat across from Dr. Richard Walsh, the senior CIA recruitment coordinator. At 19, Sophia possessed a quiet intensity. Dark auburn hair framed striking green eyes that seemed to see more than most people her age. She wore a simple black blazer, professional but understated. Her academic record was exceptional. Double major in international relations and Arabic, 3.94 GPA, fluent in 3 languages. But it was her personal statement that had caught attention, specifically the part about her mother teaching English in North Africa before her death in 2012. Dr. Walsh reviewed her file with practiced efficiency. Miss Brennan, your credentials are impressive. However, I have questions about your background section. You mentioned your mother worked as an English teacher in Morocco before her death. You were 7 years old? Yes, sir. She died in a car accident in Casablanca. Walsh frowned at his screen. I'm not finding any record of a Catherine Brennan working for the State Department or any government-affiliated teaching program in Morocco. The words landed like stones in Sophia's chest, but she kept her expression neutral. My mother worked for a private international school, Green Valley Academy in Casablanca. It wasn't a government position. I see. Walsh's tone carried skepticism. And yet you mention in your essay that her work inspired your interest in serving American interests abroad. That phrasing suggests government service. I meant it more broadly, Sophia replied carefully. She believed in cultural exchange, in building bridges between America and the Middle East. That inspired me. Walsh leaned back in his leather chair, studying Sophia with the calculating gaze of someone trained to detect deception. Miss Brennan, part of our vetting process involves verifying all claims about family background, especially any suggestion of prior government service. I'm finding no record of your mother in any database. No passport records, no work visa applications to Morocco, no employment history with Green Valley Academy. Sophia's pulse quickened. That's impossible. My mother definitely worked in Morocco. I have photographs, letters she sent, her teaching certificate from the Moroccan Ministry of Education. May I see this certificate? Walsh asked. Sophia reached into her leather portfolio and withdrew a plastic sleeve containing a faded document in French and Arabic. She placed it carefully on Walsh's desk. The certificate bore her mother's name, Catherine Brennan, along with an official seal and signature from the Moroccan education authorities. Walsh examined it briefly, then set it aside with dismissive finality. Documents can be forged. What I need is verification through official channels, which show no record of your mother anywhere. I never said she worked for the government, Sophia replied, frustration building. Then why mention it in a CIA application? Walsh pressed. Why frame her work in terms of serving American interests? Because she believed in what she was doing, because she died doing it. Walsh's voice remained firm. The fact that there's no record raises serious questions about whether the story you've been told is accurate. Sophia gripped the chair arm. Sir, I know what my mother did. I have her letters, her photographs. According to whom? Walsh asked. My grandmother, who raised me. The death certificate. Everything I've known about my mother's life. Walsh typed again, frowning. I'm not finding a death certificate for Catherine Brennan in Morocco in 2012. I'm not finding any Catherine Brennan with your mother's date of birth in our databases at all. The room seemed to tilt slightly. Sophia had faced skepticism before about her mother's work, but never outright denial of her existence. That's impossible, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My mother existed. She was real. I'm not suggesting she wasn't real, Walsh replied carefully. I'm suggesting that the information you have about her work and death may be incomplete or inaccurate. Perhaps your family was given incorrect details. Perhaps there are aspects of her life you're not aware of. Sophia's mind raced through memories. Her mother's infrequent visits home, the way she'd sometimes seemed distracted, distant, as if part of her remained somewhere else. The fact that she died so far from home, and Sophia had never been allowed to attend the funeral. Her grandmother's reluctance to discuss details beyond the basic facts. What are you suggesting? Sophia asked. I'm suggesting you may want to discuss this with your family before proceeding beginning with this application," Walsh replied diplomatically. "CIA employment requires absolute honesty and accurate disclosure. If there are discrepancies in your background that you're unaware of, it's better to resolve them now." Sophia felt tears threatening but refused to let them fall. She had spent 12 years believing her mother had been a dedicated teacher who died tragically in a foreign country. Now, a CIA recruiter was telling her that none of it could be verified, that her mother might not have existed in any official capacity. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming. Then she remembered something her grandmother had said once, late at night when she thought Sophia was sleeping. A name spoken with reverence and sorrow. A word that hadn't made sense at the time, but had lodged itself in Sophia's memory like a splinter. "Nightingale," Sophia said quietly. Dr. Walsh, who had been turning back to his computer, froze. His head snapped toward her, his expression transforming from professional skepticism to something else entirely. Shock, perhaps, or recognition, or fear. "What did you just say?" His voice had changed completely, stripped of its earlier condescension. "Nightingale," Sophia repeated, louder now. "My grandmother called my mother that once. I was maybe 10 years old. She didn't know I was listening. She was talking to someone on the phone, crying, and she said, 'Nightingale deserved better than this.'" The color drained from Walsh's face. He stood abruptly, his chair rolling backward. His hand went to his desk phone, but then he seemed to think better of it and grabbed his cell phone instead. "Don't move," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "Don't say that name again. Don't repeat what you just told me." He was already dialing, stepping toward the office door. "This is Walsh. I need you to come to my office immediately. No, right now. We have a situation." He turned back to Sophia, studying her with new eyes, as if seeing her for the first time. "How old did you say you were when your mother died?" 7, Sophia replied, her heart hammering. "Why? What does Nightingale mean?" "Miss Brennan, I need you to stay here and not discuss what you just said with anyone. Do you understand? This is a matter of national security." Before Sophia could respond, Walsh was out the door, leaving her alone in his office. Through the window, she could see him pacing in the hallway, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand gesturing with agitation. Sophia sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. The name Nightingale had transformed the entire interaction. Walsh's dismissive skepticism had evaporated, replaced by something that looked like genuine alarm. 20 minutes passed. Sophia waited, her mind spinning through possibilities, each more unsettling than the last. What if her mother hadn't been a teacher at all? What if everything she'd been told was a cover story? What if the reason there were no records was because her mother's work had required her to be invisible? The office door opened. A woman entered, perhaps in her late 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a charcoal gray suit that spoke of authority and carried herself with military precision. Her eyes, sharp and assessing, studied Sophia with the intensity of someone trained to read people. "Miss Brennan, I'm Deputy Director Sarah Mitchell," the woman said, closing the door behind her. "I need to ask you some questions, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Can you do that?" Sophia nodded, her throat tight. "Where did you hear the name Nightingale?" Mitchell asked, taking the seat Walsh had vacated. "From my grandmother," Sophia replied. "She said it once, years ago. I didn't understand what it meant." "What else did your grandmother say?" "Just that Nightingale deserved better. She was crying. I'd never seen her cry before." Mitchell was quiet for a long moment, studying Sophia's face with an intensity that made her want to look away. "Sophia, I'm going to tell you something that is highly classified. The fact that you spoke that name, that you connected it to your mother, means you have a right to know the truth. But once I tell you, your life will change. You'll carry knowledge that you can never share with most people. Do you understand?" "I understand," Sophia whispered, though she didn't, not really. Mitchell took a deep breath. "Your mother worked for the CIA under non-official cover. NOCS are the deepest cover operatives we have, living completely outside any government framework. Her cover was English teacher, which allowed her to travel throughout North Africa and the Middle East, gathering intelligence that prevented multiple terrorist attacks. And Nightingale? Her operational code name." Mitchell pulled out photographs Sophia had never seen. Her mother, but different. Harder, more focused. Wearing hijabs, business attire, always scanning her surroundings with operational awareness. "Why was I never told?" "Because your mother's cover had to remain intact even after death. Revealing she was CIA could have compromised other operations and endangered other officers. How did she really die?" Mitchell's expression softened. "She was running an operation targeting a terrorist cell planning attacks on the U.S. Embassy in Rabat. She had two choices: extract safely and risk the attack, or stay to gather final intelligence. She chose to stay. She transmitted information that saved an estimated 300 lives, but her communication was detected. She was killed before extraction." The tears Sophia had been fighting finally broke through. Her mother hadn't died in a random accident. She had sacrificed herself deliberately to save hundreds of strangers. She was a hero, Mitchell said quietly. "One of the finest officers I ever worked with. Her codename was chosen because, like the bird, she operated in darkness, singing warnings that saved lives." Mitchell withdrew another document. "This is your mother's official CIA personnel file, declassified this morning. Her service record, commendations, and the full account of her final operation." Sophia took the file with trembling hands. "There's something else," Mitchell continued. "Your mother left instructions. If you ever found your way to us, we were to make sure you understood why." She handed Sophia a sealed envelope. She wrote this before her final mission. Sophia stared at the envelope, her mother's handwriting visible. "Dear Sophia, what happens next?" she asked. Mitchell leaned back. "Your application can proceed. With full knowledge of your mother's service, your background makes you an exceptionally interesting candidate. Or you can walk away, live a normal life, but you'll know the truth." Sophia thought about the past 12 years, growing up without a mother, being raised by a grandmother who clearly knew more than she could say, the photographs of a woman who was apparently teaching English, but whose eyes always seemed to be watching something beyond the camera's frame. Everything made sense now, in a way it never had before. "I want to read the file," Sophia said quietly. "I want to know everything." Mitchell nodded. "Take it with you. Read it carefully. Then we'll talk about your future with the agency, if that's still something you want to pursue." As Sophia left the Walsh building that afternoon, her mother's personnel file and letter tucked carefully in her portfolio, she felt as if she were seeing the world differently. Every person on Georgetown's campus could be more than they appeared. The janitor could be a foreign intelligence officer. The visiting professor could be running agents. The reality beneath the surface was always more complex than the official story. She drove to her grandmother's house in suburban Maryland. Margaret Brennan was in the kitchen when Sophia arrived. "Grandma," Sophia said, setting her portfolio down, "I need you to tell me about Nightingale." Her grandmother's hands stilled. She turned slowly, her expression relief mixed with sorrow. "You know, the CIA told me today." Margaret nodded. "I always wondered when this day would come. You knew the whole time about her real work, how she really died. Your mother told me before her final mission that if anything happened, I was to raise you with the cover story until you were old enough. She hoped you'd never need to know. Why didn't you tell me yourself?" "Because I gave my daughter my word. Because I was told her cover had to remain intact. Because you were a child. Children can't carry secrets like that." Sophia sat across from her. "Tell me about her. The real her." Margaret smiled sadly. "Your mother was brilliant, driven. She spoke 6 languages fluently, could blend into almost any culture. She believed deeply in protecting America, in preventing the kinds of attacks that kill innocent people. But it cost her everything. She missed your childhood, missed being present, because she was always somewhere else, being someone else. Did she love her work more than she loved me?" The question Sophia had never dared ask slipped out. "Oh, sweetheart, no," Margaret said, reaching across the table to take Sophia's hand. "She loved you desperately, but she also believed that the work she was doing protected not just you, but millions of other children. She carried impossible weight, making impossible choices. The fact that she wrote you that letter proves where her heart was, even when her duty called her elsewhere." Sophia withdrew the sealed envelope from her portfolio. "They gave me this. She wrote it before her last mission." Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know that existed. She never told me. Should I read it now?" Sophia asked. "Only if you're ready," Margaret replied. "Once you read her words, you'll understand who she really was. There's no going back from that." Sophia carefully opened the envelope, removing 2 handwritten pages dated March 7th, 2012, 11 days before her mother died. She began to read. "My dearest Sophia, if you're reading this, it means I didn't come home, and it means you found your way to the agency. I always suspected you would. You have my stubbornness, my curiosity, my inability to accept simple explanations when you know there's more beneath the surface. I need you to understand something that I could never tell you while I was alive. I wasn't a teacher. I was a CIA officer working to protect our country from people who wanted to hurt innocent Americans. Every day I spent away from you. Every birthday I missed. Every bedtime story I couldn't read. It wasn't because I didn't love you. It was because I loved you and every other child in America so much that I was willing to sacrifice my time with you to keep you all safe. The work I do requires absolute secrecy. It requires me to be someone other than Catherine Brennan, your mother. In the field, I'm Nightingale. I sing warnings in the darkness. I gather intelligence that prevents attacks, stops terrorists, saves lives. This mission I'm about to undertake will save hundreds of people if I succeed, but it's dangerous in ways I can't fully explain. If I don't come back, I need you to know that my choice to go was made with full knowledge of what I risked, and I would make the same choice again, not because the work matters more than you, but because protecting you and children like you is the entire reason reason I do this work. Your grandmother will raise you with love and wisdom. She'll tell you I was a teacher who died in an accident. For years, that's the story you'll need to believe. But if you're reading this, it means you've learned the truth. You'll learn about my real work, and you'll have to decide what that truth means for your own life. I hope you'll choose to live freely, to pursue whatever makes you happy, unburdened by my choices. But I also know that if you're anything like me, you'll feel called to serve. If you do join the agency, remember this: the best intelligence officers are the ones who never forget why they do the work. Not for glory, not for recognition, but because somewhere, people they'll never meet get to live their lives in safety because of actions taken in secret. I'm so proud of you, Sophia. I'm proud of your intelligence, your compassion, your strength. I'm sorry I won't be there to see you grow into the woman you're becoming, but I'll carry you with me, always, in my heart, in every decision I make, in every risk I take. You are my North Star, my reminder of what I'm fighting to protect. I love you more than you'll ever know, more than I could ever adequately express. If I don't come back, know that my last thoughts were of you, always. Mom, Sophia, finished reading through tears that blurred the final words. Her mother's voice, preserved on paper, speaking directly to her 12 years after her death, explaining, apologizing, hoping. She knew she probably wouldn't survive that mission, Sophia said quietly. She knew, and she went anyway. Margaret nodded, tears streaming down her own face. That was Catherine. Once she committed to something, nothing could deter her. She believed those 300 people at the embassy deserved to live. She believed stopping that terrorist cell was worth any personal cost. Over the following weeks, Sophia read every page of her mother's personnel file. Mission reports from operations in Egypt, Yemen, Morocco, Tunisia. Commendation letters praising her asset development skills, her tactical judgment, her unwavering dedication. Testimonials from other officers who had worked with her, describing someone who was brilliant, fearless, and absolutely committed to the mission. The picture that emerged was of a woman far more complex than the simplified teaching story Sophia had grown up with. Catherine Brennan had been someone who lived in permanent danger, who created and maintained multiple false identities, who made life or death decisions in the field with no backup and no safety net. Deputy Director Mitchell called 2 weeks later. Have you finished reading the file? Yes, Sophia replied. And I want to continue my application, Sophia said firmly. I want to join the agency. Are you sure? This isn't about honoring your mother. This is about spending years of your life doing work that will never be publicly acknowledged, that may cost you relationships, normal life experiences, possibly your life. I'm sure, Sophia replied. My mother showed me that there are things worth sacrificing for, people worth protecting, causes worth serving, even when no one knows you're serving them. 3 months later, Sophia began training at the CIA's covert facility known simply as the Farm. She excelled in her coursework, particularly in operational tradecraft, languages, and asset development. Her instructors noted that she possessed an unusual maturity and understanding of operational security for someone her age. They didn't know it was because she'd been raised by a NOC officer's mother, absorbing lessons about secrecy and compartmentalization from infancy. After completing her training at the Farm, Sophia was assigned to the CIA's Counterterrorism Center, following in her mother's footsteps. She would never be a no-see like her mother. Those assignments required years of additional training, but she could serve the same cause her mother had died for. 1 year after beginning her work at the agency, Sophia stood before the memorial wall at CIA headquarters in Langley. The wall bore stars carved into white marble, each representing a CIA officer who had died in service. One of those stars belonged to her mother, though no name was engraved beside it. The fallen remained anonymous, even in death. She would be proud of you, Mitchell said, standing beside Sophia. Proud of the officer you're becoming, but prouder still of the person you are. You inherited her courage, but you also have something she sometimes struggled with, the ability to remain connected to your humanity while doing this work. Sophia touched the star, feeling the cold marble beneath her fingers. I used to resent her, she admitted quietly, for being gone so much, for dying so far away. I thought she chose her work over me. And now I understand that she chose both. She loved me by protecting a world where I could grow up safely. Her absence was the price of that protection. It's not fair, but it's real. Mitchell nodded. That's the burden all intelligence officers carry. The people they love most never fully understand why they do what they do, but you do. That makes you uniquely suited for this work, and uniquely vulnerable to its cause. As Sophia left Langley that evening, driving through the Virginia countryside toward her apartment, she thought about her mother's letter. The question Catherine Catherine had posed. What would Sophia choose to do with the truth? She had chosen to follow in her mother's footsteps, to serve in the shadows, to protect people who would never know her name or her sacrifice. It wasn't the path her mother had hoped for her. Catherine had wanted Sophia to live freely, unburdened by the weight of secret service. But it was the path Sophia had chosen freely, with full knowledge of its costs. Because she had learned from her mother's example that some work was worth doing even when no one could acknowledge it, that some sacrifices prevented greater tragedies, that love sometimes meant absence, and service sometimes meant silence. Years later, when Sophia ran her own operations in dangerous places, recruiting assets and gathering intelligence that prevented attacks most Americans would never know had been planned, she would think of Nightingale, the mother she had barely known but had come to understand, the hero whose heroism remained classified, the woman who had sung warnings in the darkness so others could live safely in the light. And in those moments, Sophia would understand completely why her mother had made the choices she did. Because standing between innocents and those who would harm them was not just a job, it was a calling. And some people, when they heard that call, couldn't help but answer, even when the answer cost them everything. Have you ever discovered that someone you loved was far more than you realized? That their sacrifices went deeper than you knew? Share your thoughts in the comments below. At Secrets Never Told, we honor those whose greatest contributions remain hidden, whose families carry forward truths that official records can't capture, and whose legacy lives on in the lives they saved and the children they protected, even from a distance.